welcome everyone for tonight's webinar on infrastructure and smart cities. Actually, right now, as all of you are aware, President Biden just passed the COVID-19 bill, which most of you hopefully have received the check, the $1,200 check. And the next thing that is on his agenda is infrastructure. As a matter of fact, he may be talking about infrastructure right now at the Congress. So tonight's presentation is going to be about infrastructure. How does that relate to smart cities? We'll talk about the current state of the infrastructure according to the 2021 American Society of Civil Engineers report. Talk briefly about Biden's new infrastructure plan. It's also called the jobs bill because it's supposed to create at least 15 million new jobs. We'll talk about also things that are probably going to be of interest to most of you, which is like, what does it translate in terms of new jobs for the economy? Okay, this new initiative on infrastructure and smart cities. So first, let's start with the definition. What is infrastructure? Infrastructure encompasses all the basic systems as well as services that it takes to run an entire economy. It includes physical items such as roads, bridges, railway, water, electricity, and so on. It also includes services like law enforcement, emergency services, healthcare, education, and so on. So if you look at the left side of your slide, it has some of the aspects that are all under infrastructure. First, you have roads, you have railways on land, and you have airports on the air and ports at sea. You have electricity and water, which is your basic utilities. And then it also covers things like schools, education, healthcare, and up to even entertainment. So if you watch like sports and so on, all the leisure time is also covered by the subject of infrastructure. Also, right now, currently we live in information and data era. So there's also IT infrastructure, which includes, for instance, wireless telephones and so on, and even includes up to satellite type of communications. So that is also a type of infrastructure. Now, there are different kinds of infrastructure. Some of them are probably the most called critical infrastructure. And if you look at this slide, you start with things like energy or electricity and water. And then you have, like, for instance, the transportation, whether it's car, roads, or buses, railways, and so on. It covers healthcare, hospitals, agriculture, food, education, schools, and even security, like locally police departments, and for the country, you have the military. And you have also economy, banking, and finance. So here, just to dive into some of them, we have roads, railways for land, you have airports for transportation, and you have like cruise liners and so on, that and as well as sea transportation for both the west and the east coast. You have energy networks like smart grid, and also includes water and waste disposal, education, schools, where it is from education for school age kids up to university, healthcare, and you have also social infrastructure. You have like TV stations, you have like ball games and so on. So normally, if you look at a society, at the entire society, the ones that normally catches most of our attention are the physical infrastructure, like transportation, roads and bridges and airports. And then you have electricity and water, and as well as waste. But there are equally important services that are also included under infrastructure, like police, you have ambulances, military, and so on. On the economy, you have banks and institutions, stock market. And on the social side, you have healthcare, education, as well as cultural and entertainment. So the US economy is about $20 trillion, and is actually heavily supported by infrastructure. Now, the thing about the current infrastructure is that most of the current infrastructure, whereas the roads, bridges, and so on, they were all built or started to get built in the 1950s and 60s. So they're about 50 to 60 years old already, because right now we're already in the 2020, right? So you have, if you start in the 1950s and 60s, it's already over 50 years of existence. So any of those facilities, if they are really not properly maintained, it can cause, some catastrophic type of failures, like where a dam breaches or breaks or a bridge collapses. You have also things like roads that has a lot of potholes and cause a lot of congestion, traffic congestion. The thing about also infrastructure is that the return is pretty high. So for the return gets multiplied. So for even say 1% of GDP that's spent on infrastructure, that will cost a lot of return in terms of job creation. So every 4 years, there's a report card on what's the status of the infrastructure. So 2021, this year, actually, it was the time to come out with the new version of the report card. So the ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, began issuing report cards since 1998. Okay, so every 4 years, there's a new report. And the latest one actually just came out in March of this year. So I'm going to give you the report card for 2021. Altogether, there are about 17 categories where the infrastructure is broken into. So this slide shows currently the 17 sectors that are encompassed in the report. You guys can actually also go to the internet and search for the full report by ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers. But this is the current report card. So some of the sectors that is covered are aviation, bridges, dams, drinking water, energy, waste, solid waste, as well as liquid waste, waterways. These are like, rivers and so on, levees and dams, seaports, public parks, railroad, the normal highways, schools, and then the storm water, which is like, how do you dispense with water from rains and so on, mass transit, and so on. So if you look at under each category, there's a grade, okay? And most of the grades, they are actually in the C and D category, which is not really ideal, because what you want to strive for is around a B. You should shoot for a B, And but things are actually looking up because the overall grade for 2021 is a C minus, which, okay, so I'll get into comparisons between previous years. Another thing that is important to watch under the categories, besides the current grades, okay, is also the trend. That means that is the trend towards improvements, like up, what you want to see is all upward trend. Now, a lot of them, because of the infrastructure work has been dormant for many, many years. Actually, under many administrations, they all say that they're going to work on infrastructure, and they never got to it, okay? So if you see the same, that means that they're just moving laterally. Nothing has been happening. There's no progress being made, okay? So at least things are looking up. The trend is actually overall is up, and the grade, it has improved. In the past, it always has been rated a D. The average was D. And for 2021, this is for the first time since the report has started. This is the first time where we actually see a C grade. So just look at a couple of these sectors. So we don't have time to go over each of the 17 sectors or categories, but just looking at some of the major ones like roads and bridges, is that if you look at it, the ASCE, the Society for Civil Engineers, they have estimated that it will require about $420 billion to repair some of the existing highways. Also, to do bridge repair. A lot of bridges are almost falling down, okay? And there's also some room for new construction. So system expansion is also about $167 billion of need. If you look at the railroad, for example, you have to go and distinguish between commercial rail and passenger rail. Commercial rail is actually right now the one that has the best rating has a rating of B, and it has been very instrumental in terms of accommodating the transportation for 40% of the nation's goods. So most of the railroads here locally, they run at night. So we don't see that many trains, but at night there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of railroads. Now, if you look at on the passenger side, we do have locally, for example, the Amtrak, between San Jose and San Francisco. You have the BART. But if you compare, for example, the railroad system against other countries in Europe or in China, the high-speed rail is way far behind, right? Okay. Another thing that the COVID-19 has brought to our attention, because of the remote schooling and also work from home, is the importance of the broadband, okay, IT, right? So for families that are not as well off, many of the kids could even log into to do the schoolwork because they did not have access to computers or iPads, okay? Also, if you look at overall the USA, there are many rural areas. We live on both the East Coast and the West Coast. The population is more dense in the major cities, so we actually have access to Wi-Fi. But there are a lot of the states that are more in the middle, the North Dakota, South Dakota, and so on. They don't have as much Wi-Fi capability. And they have found out because of the COVID-19, imagine how can you work if you don't have access to broadband, okay? You cannot work from home. Also, your school kids cannot go to school via the internet. So overall, if you look at the quality of the US infrastructure, just to put it into perspective, and rank the US against other countries in the world, the US only is ranked 13 in the world, okay? Way behind a lot of countries like France, Germany, Japan, Spain, and Africa, okay? If you look at the amount of money that the country is spending, the US spends about 2.4% of GDP, while other countries in Europe, they spend about double that, 5%. In China, they spend 8% of the GDP. So if you look at the ranking, this is the ranking chart, the US is ranked only 13 in terms of the quality of the overall infrastructure per country, okay? Way behind, you can see which are the countries that are doing the best. Singapore, okay, some Asian countries, and like South Korea, Japan, and some European countries, they're all ahead of the United States. Okay, so back to fast forward to today. On March 31st, Joe Biden gave a speech on infrastructure, okay? And it's called the infrastructure plan or job plan. So it's called the infrastructure or job bill, okay? Because it actually will impact the economy heavily, okay? Here are some of the highlights. First of all, it is once in a generation plan. What that means is that the last time that the US spent a lot of money was when the US highway system was built in the 1950s. Okay, so right now is once in a generation means, 50 years. They're actually 30 to 50 years, anything above that. It's not like every 4 years there's a new infrastructure proposal or bill. So it has been waiting there for a long time. Okay, and hopefully this time actually will happen. Okay, so the plan is to spend at least $2 trillion, okay, in infrastructure and to modernize roads, bridges, airports. Do you know that actually if you rank the top 50 airports in the world, the first airport that comes in, US airport that comes into view is ranked in the 32nd position. Okay, and most of the airports that are modern in the US, they do not belong to the major cities like Chicago or LA or New York. So the other thing that will be heavily changed is that right now, if you look at everybody is looking like in terms of the transportation, things are moving towards electric vehicles, right? So one of the things that they are proposing is to build 500,000 EV charging stations across the nation, okay, so that cars can move from west to east or east to west coast. Okay. Also make it the high-speed internet more accessible, especially to rural areas. Right now, the infrastructure is also being heavily affected by the climate change. So if you look just a couple of months ago in Texas, there was a shortage of electricity and water, right? And this is just only 2 months ago. So the climate is actually putting a very heavy toll on the infrastructure. So altogether, the new Biden plan is proposing to create some up to 18 million jobs. Okay, according to him, is that it will not affect the middle class. Any household that makes under 400K will not see their federal taxes go up. Most of the financing will be coming by raising the corporate tax from 21% to 28%. Now, ever since everybody has a cell phone or a smartphone, right now everything the adjective for any product is that you have attached the word smart, right? You have smart glasses, smart watches, smart CDs. Everything is becoming smart. So the same thing goes for infrastructure. So what does the word smart actually mean? It means that you leverage the latest in the technology, whereas 5G, whereas the Internet of Things, whereas AI, okay, 3D printing, a lot of the latest innovations in technology is that you leverage that to make them effective in our daily lives. So smart infrastructure means coupling the physical structure that we've been discussing up to this point and the digital twin, the digital infrastructure. So you leverage all the digital footprint, where there's 5G, where's AI, and a lot of the new sensors, the new sensor technology and so on, and try to help and leverage those the progress made in those technologies to impact our day-to-day problems and things that we face. So the benefits are, of course, reduce the cost, reduce the crime rate, less congestion in terms of traffic. You have better productivity, improve the response time, and so on. Okay. So just to tie in infrastructure with smart cities. So everything I've been talking about up to this point is that, for instance, what President Biden is trying to propose for the entire US is across the country. Okay. So for instance, highways or airports, they go between different states. Okay. Now at the local, at the state level and at the city level, then the same thing that applies is become smart city. So if you look at this slide, okay, what's the definition of a smart city? It's no different than the definition to smart infrastructure. Is that how do you leverage the latest in the digital technologies, in ICT, information and communication technology, and to reduce the cost, reduce the resource consumption, and make things more effective and more cost productive. Okay. So if you look at this picture of a smart city, and you can see a lot of parallel between this slide and the definition of the infrastructure for the whole country. Within each city, you have to deal with each type of problems: the environment, transportation, the health, the safety, the utilities, okay, and smart houses, smart homes, smart buildings, pollution problems, traffic congestion problems. So we have the same type of problems. It's just it is at different levels. One is inside the city or a town, or you can escalate to the next level, which is within each state of the union, or you go and apply to the entire nation, okay? But the problems that we're dealing with are actually the same. It's just at the different levels. So the next section that I'm going to be talking about is that how does that affect you, okay, in terms of jobs or careers. So I just did a quick search in a job hunting type of website. And if you just type in, say, infrastructure, the topic of today, say infrastructure, you have more than 18,000 hits. Okay, this is at the high level, director level, 18,000 jobs for within the U.S., which is not too surprising because there are probably over 18,000 cities in the U.S. So every city, you're going to be worrying about infrastructure at the local level, right? Also, if you look at typing in jobs related to infrastructure, there are over 100,000 jobs that come up in terms of the search list, okay? So in the next 2 or 3 slides, I'm going to just show you a sample or some of the listings that I'm talking about, some of the listings that I'm under the 118,000, okay? For instance, lead infrastructure engineer. So I'm not going to go over the job description for this particular listing, But basically, just I highlighted some of the job functions that a infrastructure engineer would do. Okay, so they would go and do monitoring jobs, maybe checking the status of the infrastructure where it needs to be serviced or upgraded. Okay. Also, a lot of these type of jobs are brand new jobs. So it's not like they have been around. These jobs have been around for many years. So you need to have also a curiosity and open-mindedness. Okay, and also be able to adapt to some of the new jobs that are coming up. So this particular listing talks about a infrastructure engineer. Similarly, you can look at job descriptions for different levels. A manager level, okay, who reports it to a VP of infrastructure. Again, some of the common keywords in terms of the job function is that look for standards and procedures, because you're trying to devise some solutions for a problem that presents within a city or within a state or within a country. And in order to make things work, you need to be able to interplay some of the solutions from different vendors. So standards is important, procedures is important, okay? Monitoring is important, okay? Doing risk analysis, dependency analysis, promoting standards. So this is just some of the keywords that you will find under infrastructure job-related function. This is for a infrastructure analyst, okay? So this is more like an expert who can help you analyze, just like you get a economic analyst in terms of analyzing the stock market. So you can have an analyst who can tell you a little bit about the status of the infrastructure, okay? So experience in identifying problems, analyzing them, how to propose solutions for it, and how to engage some of the companies that will be able to actually implement and execute the solution, okay? And of course, things that how you leverage some of the cloud and also a more agile environment, okay? So these are just 2 or 3 infrastructure job descriptions. Now, I mentioned that for smart city and smart infrastructure, some of these are pretty new, a new career. Okay, so you can see there's also some new job functions that maybe you have not seen in the past. Okay, so you have alliance or partnership manager. This is a person that will go between, say, a city who has a certain problem. Let's say that a city has a traffic congestion problem or a street illumination problem. And then how do you find a solution? You find a vendor that can supply LED lights, for example, okay? Or how do you automate the stoplights so that they're not time-driven, but they are really more like traffic-driven, okay? Also, you have, like, for instance, champion. So within a city, you can have a smart city champion who can propose solutions to some of the problems that are existent in that particular city, okay? So you promote the idea and then you propose a solution. So within a city hall, so each of us live in a certain town, right? So there's a mayor of the city, there's a municipality, there's a city office. They also have a list of the problems that they are facing. So you're trying to match what the funding or the finances for that city, how do you prioritize the problems, and how to come up with the solutions, and who is going to execute them, okay? Like anything, you can also worry about being more efficient, okay? So you can look at the status of the city and how do you make the city more efficient, or how do you make the state more efficient, okay? Also, you have analysts. So if you look at, instead of looking at a person and analyze, say, a person's health, you can look at a city and analyze the information about the city and determine where it is ill, right? Or it has some deficiencies, or it needs some areas of improvement. So you have an analyst that's analyzing the CD instead of say analyzing, say a doctor analyzing a patient. Okay. Now I mentioned that within a CD, you have right now, for instance, a lot of the new technologies such as AI. So right now you have within a CD, you have some that are leaning towards that engineers are leaning toward learning machine learning, right? Or data scientists, they learn about big data and data analytics, okay? Or they worry about the security of the internet. So they're cybersecurity analysts, okay? Now, there are some job functions listed in this slide that may be a little bit more strange that you have not seen, like professional triber, okay? You have a digital anthropologist or a customer maker, okay? Or urban mechanics, okay? So I'll be talking a little bit about some of these functions that are more non-traditional, okay? So a customer maker. So this is almost like equivalent to within a company, what a business manager is that how do you make your customer succeed, right? And that encompasses several functions. For instance, you can do a marketing function, you can do you can become an organizer, you can be a trainer, okay? And you can be providing some consultation, okay? So that is that's equivalent to a business manager within a company, right? Also alliance director. So as I mentioned, you can be the champion for the whole smart cities within a city, or you can just take one slice and try to drive the solution and for that particular area, okay? So I'm looking at my watch, so I'm doing fine in terms of time. The other thing is that we talk about usually normally in our daily lives, we have the auto mechanic, right? So every time your car is not working well, it needs a tune-up or needs an oil change. So the same thing you can be apply the same concept to a city, okay? So you can have a urban or city mechanic, which look for areas where it can be improved in terms of efficiency, okay? Things that are not running smoothly. Like for instance, I live in Fremont, and usually Mission Street is always crowded in terms of you know, after work hours. It's always tight, you know, stoplight to stoplight. So how do you diagnose a problem, and then how do you propose a solution? Digital anthropologists. So here in the past, we talk about anthropologists. You know, we think about Indiana Jones and, you know, studying, you know, bones of some previous people who died, or some artifacts of the past, right? So digital anthropologists is actually the reverse. It's looking toward the future. So right now we look at the digital technology, and then you investigate the relationship between us and the future technology. So if you look at a lot, you have heard about the digitalization, right? Everything is becoming more digital. So how do you interact or interface between the humans and what's coming instead of what's in the past? Okay, so it's an anthropologist, but looking in terms of looking at study of the humans, but in relation to some of the future technologies, rather than looking at a lot of the past cultures. Okay, professional triber. Okay, that is like a person who is actually, like here it says, a herder. Okay, for example, right now you see, right now there's a person that every morning talks about COVID-19, right? And he's urging everybody to get ourselves vaccinated. So he's like a triber. He's trying to promote a certain idea and get every person to go that direction. Okay, so if you are good in terms of selling things, or a evangelist at heart, you can become a triber. So you can become an expert in a certain area and push other people who are behind you or slower than you to move toward that right direction. industrial engineer. So right now, network engineering. So more and more, most of the solution require a network. Okay, so it's not really like a point solution. Many times, the solution lies in combining a lot of technologies, combining 5G, combining Internet of Things, combining AI, data analytics, big data, and so on. So you need to have the concept of networking. Okay, so now let me sort of like summarize is that there's an upcoming course starting in May 12th to June, where I'll be teaching a course on smart cities and covering all the fundamentals about smart cities and infrastructure. Okay, so here they're altogether 7 lectures. Each lecture is 3 hours long. Okay, so we'll talk about the concept of smart cities, the rationale why we need to focus on the smart cities, talk about energy, water, waste, smart buildings, smart homes. Also, we'll cover all the solutions. That means that what are some of the technologies like 5G, like IoT, like AI, okay, 3D printing, and so on, and how we have enough understanding of the existence of those technologies and how we can utilize those technologies towards a solution for a smart city. Okay, like for instance, traffic congestion is an example. So if you have right now you're sitting in front of the stoplight where there's no traffic on the other direction, but you're still waiting there. Wouldn't it be nice to have a sensor that detects that there's no traffic in the other direction and give you the green light, no matter where you're being? Very often you have traffic going only in one direction. Okay, so it doesn't make sense to put in 3 minutes for each side, right? Okay, so we will cover in this course also smart city examples, both across the whole world, the USA, East Coast, West Coast, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, San Antonio, as well as locally. Locally means the Bay Area, where you live in Fremont, or you live in San Jose, Palo Alto, Cupertino, okay, and so on. And there will be also a project that basically the students will actually learn to pick up a problem, pick up a city, pick up a problem, and trying to come out with a solution. Okay, so basically what the course will cover is that the problems that cities or infrastructure face. So get an understanding of what the problem is. Second is to learn about the technology solutions for those problems. And then the third is to how do you apply, how do you enlist companies that work in that area and put together a solution, okay? So in this webinar, we basically tonight we've covered what is infrastructure within a country or within a city. We talk about the current status of the US infrastructure, that basically definitely a lot of work is needed. We talk about the concept of a smart infrastructure, just like we talk about a smartphone or a smart watch or smart glass or smart home. We talk about how to move towards the next level, which is a smart infrastructure. And we talk about the different job opportunities, both old traditional as well as new jobs. Okay, so this is a new course. Hopefully you can acquire some new knowledge and also some new skills. Okay, most of you probably already have, when you went to school or college, you probably already have an area of specialization. Many times it's just going to be a refocus. It's not like if you're an accountant or if you're a program or project manager, or if you are an engineer, you'll still be doing the same function, but with a renewed focus, which is a new focus toward the smart city and toward infrastructure. So again, thank you for your attention. And we'll be opening for Q&A.
Thanks so much, William. Thank you. For everyone that just joined us a little late, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the the chat or the Q&A. My name is Monica, and I'm helping to moderate the chat and the questions today. So I also put a link to William's course, which begins May 12th, in the chat. So you can take a look there. And then if you have any questions, you can email us at Extension.
Yeah, Monica, I do see a question from Patrick Simon.
Yeah, I see that.
I'll try to answer as we go along some of the Q&A. So his question, let me repeat it here. How does risk security and privacy resilience have an impact on smart cities? And why it's not part of the lectures? Okay. So number one, it is part of the lecture. Actually, I talk about internet and talk about cybersecurity in terms of as part of the course. Okay. So definitely as I mentioned, communications is part of the technology area that I'll be covering. I'll be covering not only 5G, but I also talk about cybersecurity as well. So it is covered. It is important because it is important to us individually, okay, in terms of like our own individual ID and privacy, individual privacy and security, but also it involves a company-wide and city-wide. Okay, so all of that, it is actually being covered in the course. Okay, I see a second question from Pamela. Are these type of jobs found only in government or in private sector? Okay, so let me reiterate the thing I was just talking about in my last slide. Most of you probably already have a you have been educated at. You are maybe an accountant, or maybe you're an engineer, or maybe you are currently a program manager or a project manager. Okay, so you will be continuing to play that role. Okay, in a smart city and smart infrastructure setup. Okay, your focus will be different. Your problems will be different. So let's say that right now today, if you're an engineer working in a, let's say a semiconductor company, okay? So right now you are writing software or doing an engineering problem related to what your company does, right? Okay, so right now in terms of the smart city and smart infrastructure is that the office or the agency that you'll be working for will be addressing a different area, okay? So let's just say that right now, if you're an accountant, you can be working for a technology company, or you can be working for a hospital, or you can be working for a city. You're still doing an accounting job, okay? So the focus is not to change your previous training, but to refocus your background to be able to accommodate some of the new things that are coming down the pike. Okay, so if right now, if the $2 trillion come down in terms of being allocated by Congress, and then there will be a lot of new jobs in terms of the cities or in terms of city construction and so on. So the thing is that you can go and apply for a job within a city, for example, instead of applying for a job in a company, okay? So it does not really restrict to be government or private. Actually, it can go to both because, as I mentioned, the role of say, taking the course and learning both the problems and the solutions is that the solutions will be provided by the private sector. So let's say that you have a street illumination problem in the city of Cupertino. And the city of Cupertino says, yeah, we want to spend, $2 million on upgrading all the street lights to LED, okay? So who is the entity that has the problem is the city of Cupertino. Who is actually going to be installing all the LED lights? It will be a private company who has LED street lights, right? So actually this job goes between the entity that has the problem, which in this case are mostly cities and so on, and the solution and the technology providers, which are private companies and private firms, because all the work will still be carried out by a certain company, right? Okay. I see that I've covered most of the questions that were posted. I don't know where there's any other open verbal Q&A.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions that have come in.
Right.
If anyone does have them, go ahead and enter them in the chat or Q&A now. Otherwise, if you think of something later, you can always email us and we can connect you with William.
You are also free to bring up any a more general topic regarding either infrastructure, cities, or jobs and careers in general. So it doesn't have to be specific.
Excellent. Okay, well, I guess there are no other questions, William. Thank you again for having this session with us today. It was very informative. I think it was very eye-opening to see the different roles that are coming and the opportunities. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank both you and Sui, as well as the UCSC staff in helping me set up this webinar.
Absolutely.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
So thank you until the next time. All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
In lecture soon.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.